So yeah, everyone give a warm welcome to Katie, who I believe you're going to tell us a story.
Hopefully.
Good. Katie, everyone.
Am I just clicking through?
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Katie Willoughby and I am Head of Data Analytics at Open Data Belfast. We're based just over at the Gasworks. And I'm here today to talk to you about data storytelling and elevating your analytics by data storytelling. There we are. I've QR codes throughout, just if anybody would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, please feel free to. Okay, so starting with the basics, what is data storytelling? So I did get a little bit carried away with the GIFs here, but so Microsoft Power BI defines data storytelling as the concept of building a compelling narrative based on complex data and analytics that help you tell your story and influence and inform particular audiences. So you might be thinking, what does data storytelling have to do with my role as a data analyst? So the key really to delivering a successful data analytics project is the output. What did you find? Why is the analytics that you've conducted important? Which parts are important for which stakeholders? And really, how can you get non-technical, busy C-suite leaders to understand and use your findings? So data storytelling is important because you as an analyst have a limited amount of time to deliver the data outputs to the stakeholder. This means that you've only got one shot to get it right. Just like any story, if it's too long, if it's too complicated, or if it's too boring, you lose. So you lose your audience's attention, you lose your impact, and most critically, you've lost a whole load of time. So you could spend weeks and weeks on an analytics project, but it means nothing if you can't communicate it properly. So there are two parts to this. There's visual communication of findings, and then there's verbal communication of your findings. If you still aren't convinced that data storytelling is a key part of a data analytics role, Gartner predicts that by 2025, data stories will be the most widespread way of consuming analytics, and 75% of stories are going to be automatically generated using augmented analytics techniques. So don't get left behind. Sorry about the notes, by the way. I'm pregnant and memory isn't working so good. So why is nobody using my dashboard? This is a super frustrating question. Who else has spent weeks on a data analysis and outputted it to a requested dashboard that's been asked for, but when you look at the user stats, you can see that even the person who asked for it isn't even looking at it. So this happens to me all of the time. So the answers really is maybe it's too complicated. The audience just can't work out what on earth your dashboard or visualization is telling them. Maybe you've got too many graphs or you've just used the wrong graphs. You've no annotations or you've the wrong type or incorrect annotations, or your insights are really unclear and you've really failed to draw the attention to the so what, why does this visualization matter to me? Or maybe it's just boring or not very visually appealing. During my academic studies in data, I was never told that I would have to be creative or I'd have to develop some sort of marketing skills in order to get my technical skills noticed, but that really has been the reality. Okay, so this section is really just focusing on some quick tips that hopefully I can give you that you can take away from this and level up your data analytics and your data storytelling. So just starting with the visual communication of your findings. Okay, so structuring your data story. To begin with, your data story needs to have some sort of structure or a flow. I like to think about it as a funnel. So you start really broad and you eventually narrow your analytics down until you're answering the question that you've been asked to answer. Depending on the scale and the scope of your project, all of your findings can be written into a comprehensive report, but for a data visualization, you're just looking on answering the key question with the most relevant and exciting metrics. It can be really useful before you even begin to have a think about this process and do a bit of contextual research into your audience of your analysis and the relevant business area. So this is going to help you whenever you get down to the very bottom, the insights and the recommendations piece. So starting at the top, the data context, this is really simple. It's not really analysis, it's just facts. You're just setting the scene. What is the data source? What's the time frame? How big is your data sample? Then we move down one onto broad analysis. Again, this isn't difficult. You're outputting the overall findings of the analysis. It's an overview of some really simple metrics from the data set as a whole. So then whenever you get into the focused analysis, this is whenever you're starting to answer the client's question. What did the client ask, and which parts of your analysis are directly answering that question? So this is really where you're deciding in your data story and your output visualization what you're going to keep in and what you're going to leave out. So your data visuals here might not be as easy to interpret as higher up in the funnel. So you need to use proper labels and legends, and it might even be useful to add a little bit of descriptor text. Then we're going to move on to the insights. So insights are going to mean a whole range of different things, just depending on what sort of business you work for and your specific client. Starting really simply, insights are the data analytics key findings. So you can start with factual insights, which are just output metrics or analytics facts. You're not really saying anything, you're just saying X% of whatever was this. You can take that insight a step further and relate it back to an industry or a client. So relating a factual insight back to an industry would mean stating the factual insight and then following it up with something like, hey, this fact is unsurprising due to the approval of this new process that was introduced in 2023. And then if you want your factual insight topped off with your industry insight and to add your client insight, that would mean, adding a little bit more context or client relevance, such as which indicates the business is experiencing a bottleneck in their implementation of this industry-approved process. So the factual insights are informed by the data analysis, and the data teams pull them out, but other layers of analysis that are specific to the industry or the client, they're a little bit more tricky, and they might require a level of understanding of the industry and the client positioning within that industry. So for this, you might need to lean on the support of, say, a customer success team to really help you position those insights at the right level. Okay, so then we get down to the very bottom, which is recommendations. Recommendations are different because they take the insights of the analysis and they tell the client what to do with the insights. In general, some of your clients, maybe some less data-savvy clients, they really want to be spoon-fed. Some clients will just take the analysis and decide how they want to interpret it themselves, and they don't really care about those last two bits of the funnel. But other clients are going to see that as a missing step. They'll get your analysis and they won't use it or your visualization or the output of your story because they don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to implement the findings in their own business. They don't know how to use it to drive business change or make decisions. And they could be left looking at your analysis thinking, so what? So this is where recommendations come in. You're going to use the facts from your analysis to inform the recommendations that could result in business success through data evidence decision making. Okay, so actually making your visual. Selecting the right visual, this should ideally be thought out at the very start of your project. Who's your audience? They might stipulate what they want to see. They might tell you they want an interactive dashboard. They might tell you they want a PowerPoint. But what if they don't tell you? So you need to get an understanding of how they're planning to use this output. Are they going to use it internally to make decisions? Are they going to try and use it to sell some sort of product? Or to inform a highly technical audience? So communication's key. Let your stakeholder know right at the very start of the project what their output is going to look like. This type of open communication really helps the stakeholder to say, hey, actually, that's not what I want, and this is what I would like to see instead. And it keeps you right, knowing that when you deliver the work, it's aligned with the deliverables that were set out at the start, and it's going to save you a whole load of time on rework. Okay, now you know what the output needs to look like, and perhaps you've agreed some key metrics with the stakeholder. There's loads of guidance online of how to pick the right graph for the data that you want to visualize, such as the infographic I have stolen from Storytelling with Data. Although my main advice around picking the right graphs is just to keep it really, really simple. The more complicated your graph is, the harder it is to understand, and the more you're going to have to explain it. In a self-service product like a dashboard, you don't want to have to explain it. You need somebody to be able to open it up, instantly know what they're looking at and what a certain graph is telling them. To make things even easier, if you work for a business that regularly delivers the same analysis over and over again, you could meet with your team and talk about introducing mainstay graphs. So for instance, we always use a line graph to display sentiment over time. So having a document that matches your analysis output to a graph could improve efficiency, because if you're really busy and you have to pull out data visualizations all the time and think about how every individual one works, you could just refer back to your mainstay document and go, hey, we always use that graph for this. This is all about making your life a little bit easier. So keep it simple, and also don't use too many graphs on a single display. You also don't need fancy graphs that you've never heard of before. I had someone a few weeks ago talk to me about 3D graphs. And when you look at them, like they might kind of instantly look cool, but if you keep looking, you're kind of still going, what on earth am I looking at? And it kind of just distracts you from a whole load of things. But I'd say there are loads of really cool graphs on places like Tableau Public, and they look class, but chances are if you put them out to the majority of your clients, they're going to be really confused and they've no idea what they're looking at. Okay, annotations. Label everything really clearly in an easy to understand way. Make sure to list your data sources, timeframes, and any really key limitations or caveats, and highlight really obvious key findings. Make them really obvious. So here are two graphs without annotations that perfectly demonstrate why properly annotating your graphs is so important. The top chart is from P&G's investor relations presentation. The chart has no labels, so this means we have to decipher it ourselves. With no idea if before or after is better, can we assume that the flat bars are a good thing? Who knows? I don't know what point they're trying to make. The bottom graph was presented in 2013 by Tim Cook for Apple to showcase iPad sales. So the graph has no scale. So I don't know if there are hundreds, thousands, or even billions of iPad sales. The graph also shows cumulative sales rather than annual sales, so it's properly inflating the data. Okay, branding toolkit. First thing to note here when I'm talking about some of this visual presentation section is that I'm not expecting this to be part of a data team role. Some of them are business-wide, some of them are for marketing teams, and you won't be the right person to produce them. But other parts are collaborative and will definitely need data team's input. This is about building out tools up front so that whenever you're asked to do a data story or a visualization or a dashboard, you have all these different tools at your fingertips to pull together to make something amazing that looks like part of a product from your company. Most companies will have a branding toolkit, and it should apply to your data visualizations and outputs. Using the toolkit lets you create continuity between data outputs, and it creates brand and product recognition for your business. And in having a defined style, it doesn't matter if I make the visualization or you make the visualization, people instantly recognize it as a product of your business. Templates. So you also want to have a suite of about 3 to 6 templates or enough options that enable you to be creative, but also creates that recognizable style or product. So you really want to avoid clutter. Multiple views of a visualization, if you need them, is much better than a busy visual. Templates should be clean. They should have a really structured order and be easy to incorporate into your visualization. And you need to decide on a fixed grid size. Templates should all be very similar, but allow for a differing number of graphs, textual summaries, or just headline metrics. So the templates make your life easier, because if you get to planning your data story and you think, hey, I really need to show 3 graphs and an insight, then you just go through your template deck and you go, hey, there's that template that has 3 graphs and a bit of room for some text, and you take that one. Okay, icons. Again, you should have a suite of icons at your fingertips. These are just small images that marketing or product teams say that they're happy for you to use. They all look similar to each other. They all need to be the same colors, the same sort of styles. Maybe your company creates them themselves. Not all of your data visuals are going to need an icon, but icons give you a little bit of creative freedom, and you can add them in if you think they make your visual better. Wireframes. So at this stage in the process, you have had to think about the narrative, you know the key messages you need to get across, and you are ready to get creative. So personally, I find grabbing a pen and paper or whiteboard the easiest way to mock up ideas. And then maybe I'll discuss them with the rest of the team, if there is a team there, or some colleagues, just to decide maybe what the best option is going to look like. Okay. This is the most important one. A general rule of thumb when you're outputting a data visualization is do not assume any knowledge. You know who you're delivering this output for, but you don't have any control over who it's shown to or who it's shared with after it leaves you. So you want to leave absolutely no room for the misinterpretation of the data. If your mum doesn't get it, you haven't told the story well enough. It doesn't have to be your mum. The idea is just to show the data visualization to someone who's no idea what the project is or what your analysis found. If they can't tell you something about what they're looking at, then your visual communication of your findings has been a flop. Okay. Presenting data stories with maximum impact. So in this section, I'm just going to talk about verbal data storytelling, now that at this stage you've got the perfect visual. So data experts. So a data consultant is just that. You are the data expert in the room. Being on a client call where perhaps you don't know the client or the business in depth or their industry is really tricky. But as a data analyst, you've taken their data, you've transformed it, you've analysed it, you've visualised it, so you know the data. Actually, in most cases, you're going to know that specific part of the data better than the person who has requested this project because you've spent so much time doing the analysis. The really important part of this is confidence. So you need to know the data because that's your job. You need to understand the why and tell your story in the context of why the analysis matters to the audience. Adapt your communication style for the audience. If the audience is really data savvy, then you can be more technical. And if they're a non-technical audience who just want to understand the bottom line, then you also need to think about that in your communication style. Preempt questions. Firstly, no matter what calls you're on, you aren't always going to know all of the answer. But a great tip is to go through your presentation ahead of time, really critically, and preempt the client questions. So write them down and prepare some answers. Sometimes they're really obvious questions that can arise when you look at a presentation, and being prepared to answer them is helpful and it makes you look good. If the question's data specific and you don't have the answer, that's fine, but never go, oh, I really don't know that answer, sorry. Don't apologize for it. You just say, oh, I'm going to take that one offline, great point, and then you can follow up afterwards, or you could go one step better. For instance, if it's an interactive data visualization, you could build it into the dashboard and just say to them, hey, I'll let you know whenever that question you've asked is integrated into your product, and then you'd give them access that way. If you aren't a subject matter expert, bring one. As the data expert, you aren't expected to know everything about the business, the client, or the industry context. So if you need support from a sales or customer success colleague, then bring one, because they're really going to help to contextualize the analysis and position the findings for the client. Confidence. So behind the scenes, data analytics is very, very different from sitting in front of a client, and practice really does make perfect. And this is actually helpful in the remote environment that lots of people are still working in, because you can practice, and also even when you do the live call, you can write a script, prepare for potential questions, and if you're talking through an interactive data visualization, know exactly which buttons that you're going to press, have a plan written down. Increasingly, clients want to see that wow factor just through something other than a PowerPoint. So if you can get comfortable doing a live demo, this is what will really benefit your presentation skills and being able to react in unforeseen circumstances. It also means that you aren't restricted in terms of what you're able to show your client in the same way as you would be in a PowerPoint deck. Because if they've asked a question that you know your dashboard can answer, you just go, yeah, sure, and you click through until it drills down into the answer. Okay, So we're on to interactivity. So again, bringing that wow factor, as I mentioned in the previous slide. If you've the opportunity to present something live or interactive, then this can be much more impressive to an audience than a static PowerPoint. Press the buttons in your presentation to drill down or answer the client questions. And again, this is going to prevent you having follow-up calls or meetings to answer questions. You can close out sooner, kind of prevents a little bit of time wastage. And this also feeds into our previous discussion on preempting questions. If you can preempt questions and build out that path to answer the question, then that's perfect. So I would say just be prepared to use an interactive dashboard on a call. Times are changing and tech is evolving. I know loads of companies still are presenting in static PowerPoints when they're investing in really fancy BI tools and software. Okay. So I wanted to leave you all with some resources and companies that I find really useful in my day-to-day job. So Canva, if you haven't already discovered Canva, today is the day. Your time is now, and stop sleeping on this free tool. It doesn't matter what your data visualization output is, I'm confident you can make it better using Canva. It's a whole range of templates for infographics and presentations, but it can also be used to find icons and to make templates or wireframes for your data visualizations. Templates can also be exported and really seamlessly actually just uploaded as images and put in behind Tableau or Power BI dashboards. So that's actually a really, really simple way to make somebody go, oh, that's so cool. What have you done? And all you've done is thrown a couple of images in from Canva. Storytelling with Data and the Data Storytellers are both really great accounts to follow on socials for storytelling tips and tricks. And again, Tableau Public is the ultimate source of inspiration for really cool visuals, and often the creators provide data sets and videos that show you how to recreate the visuals yourself. Accessibility of the tech industry. So I wanted to reflect back on this presentation and note that I haven't focused very heavily at all on technical skills. As a data analyst, you're not spending 100% of your time behind the scenes coding. You are in a hybrid role where you need to be immersed in the business, not only to be a data expert, but a business domain expert in order to translate analytics findings into business value. We aren't just expecting data analysts to be, sorry, go back one. Thank you. Oh no, sorry, we were forward. We aren't just expecting data analysts to be smart, technical people who are able to be great at data analytics. We're expecting them to be innovative enough to come up with new ideas and analysis projects that are going to benefit the business. We're expecting them to be able to understand what's important to the business and to the business leaders. We need them to have the confidence to present it back, explain findings, even when they aren't what the business is expecting to see. We need them to be brave enough to formulate and share opinions and insights based on the findings, knowledgeable in a whole range of data sets. We need them to be great storytellers, great marketers, so that your outputs actually get looked at. We need them to be analytical, objective, and not bring in any bias. They have to have attention to detail. They need to be creative, adaptable, and most importantly, they need to be able to influence whoever it is they're presenting their story to. So while technical abilities are really important, they're not everything. Remember to invest in your soft skills, because communication really is the key to being a successful data analyst. As a sector, we're growing at a crazy rate, and there are roles out there that haven't even been invented yet. And I can guarantee there's space in the tech sector for your skill set. A few years ago, I had certainly never heard of a Scrum Master or a full stack developer. And at uni, I didn't know data analyst was a viable career path, and certainly not one that I was going to follow. There is a role in the tech industry for you, for your skill set, and perhaps it doesn't exist yet, but new roles are being created all the time. Work out what your skills and passions are and how they translate value to a business or to an employer, rather than letting a job description or a job role put you into a box. The tech world is constantly changing. Therefore, as an employee in this industry, so are you. Be brave and keep creating your own path. So, key takeaways. So, great analysis is nothing without great storytelling. Don't overcomplicate it. Data storytelling is about you and your ability to influence other people. So if you are still more alert than my last GIF, then thank you very much for listening. If you aren't, then perhaps I need to rethink how good I am at storytelling. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to take a few questions if anyone has anything. Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any questions? That's really annoying because, I kept saying, would you preempt what was going to come up? But it looks like you absolutely did.
It was the gifts.
None in the room?
Just overwhelmed.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Katie. I was absolutely here for the gifts, especially big Muppets fan.